What's that? Oh, well, if everyone has books, I don't think we need to do that. Thank you. Okay. So all right. So we just chanted Hare Krishna for about 45 minutes, and that's transcendental sound vibration. It's described in the ancient Vedas, the Kali Santarana Upanishad, Iti Shodashakam Namanam Kali Kalmashanashanam, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That in this age called Kali Yuga, this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it's the most powerful method for self-realization and sublime consciousness available. It's actually described. I mentioned a few minutes ago, I was talking with Erica, that my PhD dissertation in the 1990s, my PhD dissertation is entitled Effects of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on Stress, Depression, and the Three Gunas. So we did a group study on the effects of chanting Hare Krishna, and the results completely confirm the Vedic assertions that chanting Hare Krishna significantly reduces one's stress level and increases one's life satisfaction and decreases depression and increases fulfillment and happiness. All those experiences we're all looking for. So before we discuss, before we discuss Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to chant a few more mantras to continue to invoke blessings and auspiciousness in our gathering here. So these mantras, these mantras are my prayer to higher personalities that whatever I speak is going to faithfully represent the spirit and substance of Bhagavad Gita, that I'm not just making stuff up from David Wolf or something, that I'm a transparent instrument for this ancient transformational wisdom. Om Angyanatimmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurandilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. So it's October 6, 2024. We're here in Groveland, Florida at the Gopal Eco Village and Cal Sanctuary. And we're at a Bhakti Yoga Enlightenment program, and we're studying Bhagavad Gita. Let's study chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person, text 10. Chapter 15, text 10, Bhagavad Gita.
Page number 609.
609 in this edition. This is this edition, small edition. So we'll start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Utkramantam stitam vapi bunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nanupashyanti pashanti jnanachakshush Ukramantam stitam vapi punjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananupashyanti pasyanti jnanachakshusha Utkramantam stitam vapi punjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananupashyanti pasyanti jnanachakshusha Utkramantam stitam vapi punjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananupashyanti pasyanti jnanachakshusha
Ukramantam sitam vapi
Utkramantam stitam vapi
Punjanam va gunanvitam
punjanam va gunanvitam
Vimudhananupashyanti
vimudhananupashyanti
Pashyanti jnanachakshushaha
pasyanti jnanachakshusha. All right. So the translation is the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Then the purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word Gyanachakshusha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances and enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power of understanding their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so I'll read the verse one more time. Kramantam stitam vapi pujanam bhagunan vitam vimudhananu pasyanti jnana chakshusha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Okay? This talks about jnana chakshus, the eyes of knowledge. So just even in ordinary life, we can understand this principle of the eyes of knowledge. Okay, the eyes of knowledge, just like that so let's say if a 3-year-old child looks at the sun, so the 3-year-old child sees the sun is a yellow circle in the sky, perhaps 3 inches in diameter. That's what it sees. Okay, that's what it sees. But now when we look at the sun, we don't see that. We don't see that it's a small yellow circle in the sky. We see no, it's actually, this is a stellar body, like 1.4 million times the volume of Earth, right? Okay. So that's because we're seeing with the eyes of scientific knowledge. We're seeing with the eyes of scientific knowledge. So this talks about the eyes of spirit, the knowledge of spiritual science. Srila Prabhupada, he described Krishna consciousness or the process of bhakti yoga as a science of self-realization. Two pillars of science. One, a hypothesis, a logical hypothesis. Just because something seems logical doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So a next pillar of science is we can go into the laboratory and do an experiment. We can do an experiment, and just like we say, oh well, yeah, according to the chemistry algebra, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen make water. But I can say, well, I think that's just your belief. Well, it's not about I believe, I don't believe. You can go into the laboratory, mix the hydrogen, mix the oxygen, see if you get the same results as so many thousands of scientists over history. So similarly, this Krishna consciousness, it's a spiritual science. Okay, so let's kind of like keep a note of the child seeing the sun as a little circle, but we see with the eyes of knowledge. It's like an analogy for where we're going in this discussion today. Okay, so there was a great personality about 500 years ago, named Sanatan Goswami. A great personality, 500, and he was practically the prime minister of the land, practically the prime minister of the land. He was very wealthy. He was fluent in 6 languages, highly intelligent. He had all the opulences, aristocratic birth, high education, physical beauty, physical handsome. And then he approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's a combined form of Sri Radha Krishna. And he appeared about 530 years ago to show us how to engage in service to Krishna. So Sanatan Goswami, I won't go through the whole pastime, the whole story, but Sanatan, so he's this very successful person in the world. He's got the fame, he's got the billions of dollars, he's got the position, he's got the status. Okay, so he's got it all. And he approached Lord Chaitanya. And the first thing he says is, Kayami Kenemaya Jare Tapachai. He says, people think I'm this great personality. But the reality is, I'm sharing with you confidentially. The reality is, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know who I am. I do know I'm suffering. I do know that I'm suffering. And I don't even know why I'm suffering. That's my reality. People say I'm a great pundit, a great learned scholar. And I'm such a fool that I believe them. Yes, I know so many verses like that. So he might say he had all the masks. I'm the smartest. I'm the most successful. I'm the most famous. But in this humble moment of vulnerability with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, yes, yeah, I believe that I'm so great, but the reality is, I'm lost. I don't even know who I am. The only thing I know is I'm suffering like anything. Of course, I don't admit that. That's part of the inauthenticity of material life, right? Like, yeah. I conduct some seminars, like transformational seminars. I remember at the end of one seminar, and we were having a kind of event afterwards. This was at the end of an advanced seminar. And there was one woman there. She was a very bright woman, a lawyer, and we had gone through a 7-day, one week seminar. And then there was a lot of guests there at this event the day after the seminar. And she said to the guests, now, those of us who've been through the self-realization seminar, now we can actually live the life that we pretended we've lived on Facebook. Now we can actually, okay. So, okay. So, all right. So if we're lost to ourselves, if we're lost to ourselves, then we can do all the pretense we want. We can acquire this. There was an imagery, a joke by some comedian. He said something. Yeah, he said trying to be happy by external acquisitions. He said it's like trying to satisfy one's hunger by taping sandwiches to your body. I'm sorry I put that image in your mind, but there you go. So yes, and so that's it. So if I'm lost to myself, there's no chance of happiness. There's no chance. Then it's just a life of quiet desperation, or not so quiet. Earlier we were quoting Shakespeare. Shakespeare has one character, and his line is, life is a tale. Life is a tale. Very romantic. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Very bleak. So that's what life is without self-realization. That's what life is without self-realization. So, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Hare Krishna, welcome. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he gives the metaphor of, like, if we have a string of zeros, 5 zeros, 10 zeros, 20 zeros, what's the value? What's the value? The value is a big zero, a big zero. Okay. So the zeros, they represent the different life compartments. Maybe physical fitness, or maybe what's our bank account look like, or what kind of house what kind of car do we drive? Who do we socialize with? Okay, all zeros. Maybe we notice. But then in the analogy, if we put a one in front of the zeros, then the one, then it gives value to, then it becomes a trillion and a quadrillion. It becomes a very big number. So the one, that's self-realization. That's the self turning towards itself and self-discovery, the self turning towards source, God, and the spirit of devotion. Then everything else takes on meaning. Otherwise, it's just full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So Sanatana Goswami started his association with Lord Chaitanya saying, who am I? Who am I? Why am I suffering? Who am I? Why am I suffering? Okay. So this, in a sense, this is the beginning of human life. This is the beginning of human life. Other species, animals, plants, they're not asking that question. So it was the summer of 1983. I was backpacking on Europe, and I was at a place called Villa Vrindavan outside of Florence, Italy. Actually. And there's actually, my understanding, it used to be a mansion owned by Machiavelli, and sent out to Bhakti Yoga Ashram. And so I was there, and there's big festivals. They had 1,108 preparations of prasadam. I remember it very clearly, like that. And then after the festivals, the idea was to engage me in service. Like, I didn't speak Italian, and they found it difficult to engage me in services. You should just read all day. So I read Bhagavad Gita cover to cover because I was useless otherwise. So okay. Yeah, and then well, sometimes I'll put it this way. Yeah, so there at 22 years old in the summer of 1983, outside of Florence, Italy, I read Bhagavad Gita cover to cover. It completely ruined my life. Now I want to share it with you. That's the verse talks about sharing. So I wasn't supposed to say that. Okay. So ruined my life. And I had life plans, this and that. At the same time, again, at that point, it's not like I was looking for spirituality. I wasn't looking for God, but I had to admit, this makes sense. This made a lot more sense to my intellect than anything else I'd been exposed to. Not like I'd been exposed to everything in the world, but I've been through university, had a bachelor's of science degree. I did, visited different religious groups, different yoga groups, this and that. Okay, and so and not like you're expected to trust. So David Wolf says it makes sense. Why should that mean anything to me? Doesn't need to mean anything to you. But we invite you, study Bhagavad Gita, apply your intelligence with with uh, with the skeptical intelligence, and so ask your questions, see what your doubts are. And I had to admit this made sense. But then what was even more challenging was because it not just gives like a philosophy that makes sense, but it says, okay, now if you want to practice the truths of the philosophy, here's a process to practice. Go into the laboratory. You can go into the laboratory of your own heart, your own conscious. So then I thought, well, I like to consider myself an honest person, so I owe it to myself to try to practice the process. So I decided to make a 6-month experiment practicing the process given in Bhagavad Gita. And that was 83, 84. And the truth is, I was satisfied with the results, so I'm still doing the experiment. And I've been saying this, you show me something better, you show me something more logical, philosophically, logically, you show me a process that actually gives me more joy, and I'll put this aside, won't look at Bhagavad Gita again, and I'll do that. So far, 41 years, no one has shown me, so I'm still doing this. So, okay. So everything I found just like was really rational and satisfied my intellect. So starting, you might say, at the ABCs, and this relates to this verse. Bhagavad Gita describes earlier in the second chapter. In one sense, the second chapter provides a summary of what comes. Because it provides a summary of all the themes. One of the main themes is the difference between spirit and matter, the difference between soul and body. So this is important conceptually, intellectually, and practically. Because we were talking about Sanatan Goswami said, I don't know who I am, I do know I'm suffering. And as long as we're in ignorance about who we are, we're going to suffer. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhayam Dvitiya Biniveshata Syat, that to the extent that we misidentify the eternal spiritual self with the temporary material body, we will be suffering, we will be in misery. Whatever therapy we get, whatever meditation we do, whatever yoga we do, whatever seminars, to the extent that we misidentify the timeless spiritual self with the temporary body, we will be in anxiety. Okay, so we'll deconstruct that more. Bhagavad Gita describes Dihinosmin yata dehe komaramyo vinam jara tata dehantara praptir jirastatra namuyati. What that says is, as the embodied as the embodied self continually passes from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. Okay? So my emphasis here is that this isn't about belief. This isn't about, well, you're a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu, or this is spiritual science. This is universal principle. As the embodied spirit soul continually passes from childhood to youth to old age. In our seminars, we sometimes do a quick thought process. We'll do it now. Imagine that you're looking at a photograph of yourself from when you were 5 years old. Just imagine. Now, when you look at that photograph, do you say, who is this person? Who is this stranger? No, no. You say, that's Erica when I was 5. You say, that's Aditya that's David when I was 5. Okay. Now, basic science, we know there's not one molecule, not one atom in the body now that was there at 5. We could say, oh, the body grew. But that's not true. That's just an illusion. It's not like, well, the molecules got bigger and bigger. No, all the parts are completely replaced. Still, there's some constant identity that I call David. Right? So that indicates that constant identity is something non-material. Right? Someone can say, yeah, I'm an atheist. I'm a Jew. I'm black. I'm white. I'm Chinese. I'm Russian. I'm Arab. The body changes, and we have some constant identity. This is universal principles. Universal principles. Okay. And to the extent that we misidentify that constant identity with the external body, we're going to be in anxiety. Why? So again, Chantan Goswami says, I don't know who I am, but I do know I'm suffering. I do know I'm suffering. I'm suffering so many miseries. So core foundational miseries, Janma Mrityu Jara Vadi, Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam means the core miseries are birth, death, old age, and disease. Birth, death, old age, and disease. So we don't like these things, birth, death, old age, disease. We don't like them. We resist them. Oh, there's disease. We're scared of them. It's natural. It's natural. Hare Krishna. Nandamaya Prabhu. Hare Krishna. It's natural because we are deathless. By nature, we're deathless. That's why someone's coming with a knife or a gun, we run or we fight. Our nature is to not die. Hare Krishna, welcome. Welcome everyone to Gopal Eco Village and Cow Sanctuary. We're discussing Bhagavad Gita. We're discussing this difference between spirit and matter, between the soul and the body. So as long as we identify with the body, I'm going to get a bit more nuanced here. So Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhumira po nalo vayu kamana buddhir evacha, ahankara itiyame bina prakritir astada. He describes 8 basic elements of material energy: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. That's what's called like the external body. But then there are 3 subtle material elements: mind, intelligence, and false ego. To use an analogy, like here's a computer. There's the hardware that represents the external body, the gross body. Then the software. Software represents mind, intelligence, and false ego. It's also the mind. That's the mental platform, thoughts. It's more subtle than matter, but it's more subtle than gross matter, but it's still subtle. So we're not the mind. We're not the hardware. We're not the software. I'm the operator of the computer. And so this is a philosophical response to who am I? It's a philosophical response to who am I? The first aphorism in the Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, means that now that we've achieved a human form of life, now's the time to inquire. Now's the time to ask these questions about spirit, about matter. Right? Other species, like Teilhard de Chardin said, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Just like outside, there are spiritual beings having a squirrel experience. There are spiritual beings having a tree experience. So the special opportunity as spiritual beings having a human experience is we have the opportunity to recognize I'm lost and I'm suffering, and I want to know who I am and how I can relieve myself of this suffering. It's the beginning of human life. Without that, basically, uh, it's a life full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, the four basic human activities. The four basic animal activities. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So the special opportunity in the human life is, in the human form, is to not to neglect our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and to use our time in this body to cultivate self-realization, to ask questions like this: how can I relieve myself? Because that's the thing, like, even if we have everything, like Sanatan Goswami, we got it all. We got the job, we got the career, we got financial freedom, we got this attractive spouse, we got this house, whatever we got. But you're gonna die. The body's gonna die. Even if I got everything right, but I'm gonna lose it. The government's gonna take it. Someone's envious, they're gonna drag me down. And if everything's great, the body's gonna get old, become diseased, and die. So that's fearful. Now, see, the good news of this philosophical foundation for a response to the question, who am I? The good news is we don't die. We don't die. Only the external covering dies. Only the material body dies. And to the extent that we identify the self with the body, then we're scared. Then I'll be destroyed. And the body will be destroyed. The body will be destroyed. Yeah. Yeah. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he gives the analogy of the cat's jaws, the jaws of a cat. Okay. So what's the experience of the jaws of the cat from the viewpoint of the mouse or the rat? And it's very terrifying. It's a nightmare. It's very terrifying, right? Now, same jaws of the cat. Now, the jaws of the cat represent death and its accompanying friends, old age and disease. Old age and disease. So what's the experience of the jaws of the cat from the point of view of the kitten? From the point of view of the kitten. It's warm and loving, very nurturing, very, very nurturing. Safe, sacred, soft, nourishing, protected. Same jaws. So similarly, we are like the we're like the rat or the mouse to the extent that we live our life for those pleasures that will be annihilated by time. Those pleasures and gratifications that maybe last a few seconds or a day or a week. Even if they last 1 trillion years, that's not going to be satisfying for the self. The example is given. Just like let's say if we were to take a fish out of water, and let's say in this scenario, we give the fish like a big mansion, and it's the mortgage is paid. Now the mortgage is paid, so no anxiety. And it's like, whatever, it's like 10,000 square feet. It's got servants, and the fish has like bank accounts with billions, and the fish has a prestigious position with a Fortune 500 company, and the fish has an attractive spouse fish. Oh yeah. What will the fish do? I'll tell you. The fish will flop and die. The fish will flop and die. Because it's outside of water. Our water is eternity. Our water is eternity. And so we're only going to be happy, satisfied, fulfilled, peaceful when we satisfy the soul, because the soul's nature is eternal. And as long as we're chasing after, St. Francis said, we're searching after what is searching. We're searching externally for that which is intrinsic to the soul, that's alive in self-realization and devotional service to the Supreme Personality of God. So as long as we're dependent for our happiness and fulfillment and peace and vibrancy and security on anything that is fleeting, whether fleeting for 1 second or 2 weeks or even 1,000,000,000,000 years, we're going to be in anxiety, because it's always the shadow. It's never the substance, always the shadow. Now think about a shadow, just like let's say there is a shadow of a tree or the shadow of a person or shadow of a big building. The shadow of a big building. With the shadow, we don't get any sense of what the real substance is like. What's the real tree like? What's its texture? What's its fragrance? We don't get any sense from the shadow. But the shadow is not useless, because from the shadow, we can get a clear idea. The real substance must exist. There must be a real tree, because here's the shadow. So this process of bhakti is described in Bhagavad Gita, this ancient timeless literature, Bhagavad Gita. It's a process of bhakti yoga. And this process brings us to the real substance, the real tree, the actual joy of the self. It brings us, to quote Srimad Bhagavatam. No, actually, there was a great saintly king named King Rishabhadev. And in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Nayam deho deham bhajam nuiloke kastan kanmam arte vid bhujamye. Tapu divyam puchate nasatvam shudyad yasmad brahma sokyam tvanantam. He's talking to his sons, headed by a son named Bharat. And he says to his sons, don't settle in this life for those gratifications and stimulations that are available to the animals, to other species. In this human form of life, go for that joy, that bliss that is ever expansive, ever deepening, ever expanding bliss. And that's available. That's available. And the process for that is called bhakti yoga. Yoga, this term, everyone knows the term yoga. Bhagavad Gita is the source book for all types of yoga. And the essential meaning of yoga, like the English word to yoke, comes from the Sanskrit yoga. And essentially, yoga means the self yoking or connecting with itself in self-realization, and the self yoking or connecting with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in an attitude of devotion. And that, to engage in self-realization and bhakti, devotional service to God, that brings a happiness that is untouchable, unstoppable. Even the worst, most terrible tragedies, catastrophes we might imagine, whatever happens, we can always be engaged in bhakti yoga. The most straightforward and simple way is by chanting divine mantra, the names of God, for example, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can try it. We're walking down the street. We're at home washing the dishes. We're driving in the car. We can say, as Prabhupada would often say, there's no tax. There's no tax. There's no fee. There's no tuition. We can try and see what it's a mantra meditation, mantra yoga. It's not meditation on silence or a candle. It's meditation on transcendental sound vibration. Transcendental means sound vibration that's unaffected by any of the modes of material nature. And so anywhere we can chant Hare Krishna. It's a meditation. Do our best to focus our power of hearing on the sound of each word of the mantra, and notice our experience. Hare Krishna. And Lord Rishabhadev, he also says, Tapo divyam putraka sattvam shuddhyadyasma brahma sokyam tvanantam. Anantam means unlimited bliss. So we engage in this process of bhakti yoga, and we open ourselves up to unlimited bliss. The example is there of like the disease of jaundice. This is described in the Nectar of Instruction. Just like, actually, I have two children. They're both in their 30s now, so adult children. But when they were born, they both had jaundice. Not serious, but they needed to stay and get observed or something. But apparently for adult jaundice, so when one is jaundiced, then sweets taste bitter. But apparently, the cure for jaundice is to eat sweets. And then what happens is when one eats more and more sweets, and then the disease gets cured, and then the sweets taste sweeter and sweeter. The actual sweet taste we have access to. So similarly, to the extent that we're in material conditioned life, meaning to the extent that I'm attached to these masks, these facades based on the body, it's like, okay, we're talking here about absolute truth. Now, the term absolute is not really a very politically correct term, but let me explain. By absolute, I mean that which is true, good, and beautiful in all time and space. In all time and space. So, for example, if I say, I'm David Wolf, I'm 63 years old from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's relative truth. Was I David Wolf a million years ago? Will I be David Wolf a million years from now? No. Yeah, that's relative truth. Okay. Yeah. But I'm not this body. I'm eternal spirit soul. I'm a servant of God. That's true in all time and space. That's what we mean by absolute truth. So to the extent that we identify with these false identifications, whether related to race, nationality, or education, I got these letters next to my name, or physical appearance, or here's my status in society, or whatever the different images we are that we're attracted to, like that. The extent that we identify with anything connected with the material body, then the process of bhakti will taste jaundiced. It might taste bitter. It might taste bitter. But then as we practice it more and more, as we chant Hare Krishna more and more, then it tastes sweeter and sweeter. Its original sweetness is accessible to us. So, okay, and then along with chanting, also there's tapo divyam, which means austerity. There's some basic regulative principles that are helpful, regular principles that are helpful on the path of bhakti, and we can discuss them more. I thought to pause here. Again, we're just kind of opening the lid to a few drops of the ocean of this philosophy and practice that is Krishna consciousness. If at this point in our conversation, if anyone has any questions you'd like to ask, or doubts or inspirations or realizations anyone would like to share, I'd be welcome to hear from you. Questions or comments at this time?
Thank you very much for an enlightened discussion.
Thank you for what's your name?
Ram.
Ram? Ram. Yeah. Jai Ram. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, sharing?
You shared that turning of self towards self in the spirit of discovery.
I mentioned that. Yeah.
What does it really mean? Can you please elaborate more on that?
Okay, what's that really mean? The self turning towards itself and self-discovery, Nichi Gopal asks. Okay, yeah, thanks for the question. So, yeah, so material life means our focus, because the power we have is to focus our consciousness. The power we have is to focus our consciousness. And so we'll tend to focus our consciousness on the objects of the senses. Jayatovi Shampumsa Sangaste Shubhajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamak Kamak Prodobjat. So, so, so rather than turning towards the self, we'll focus on the objects of the senses. I see that. Okay, and that's related in this verse. Prabhupada talks about lust. Okay, so while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment to them. From such attachment comes desire, or lust. And from frustrated lust comes anger. And if we're angry and irritated and stressed out and annoyed and resentful, we probably got some unfulfilled lust happening. Okay. Sorry for the news. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger here. Okay. So object, maybe it's a visual sensor, hearing, I want to hear this music. I want to see this form. I want to smell this. I want to taste this. Okay. See, I want to touch this. So we have so that's where our consciousness is focused on the senses. Gross senses or subtle senses. Kind of like, because our lust, our attachment can be, I want respect from this group. I want adoration from this person. I want profit from this business. So that's kind of, it's a little subtle, but it's the same thing. So that's where our consciousness will tend to be focused, on the gross or subtle objects of the senses. Profit, adoration, distinction, like that. And then we develop attachment to them. Well, Prabhupada, in that purport we just read, Prabhupada talks about lust is the driving force for this transmigration of the soul. So lust means, I don't want that. I need it. I need it. I need to have it. My whole sense of identity and pleasure and existence is based on me getting that when, now, like that. Okay. And so lust means there's no room for empathy. I don't care what others feel. I don't care what others feel. Even I'm so maybe I'll even pretend to care, and I'll be generous to you if we can do a business deal that'll give me the profit that I want or something like that. So the conscious material life means the consciousness is externally focused. And so Bhagavad Gita is like, okay, but then like how Bhagavad Gita is asking the question, how well is that working for you? Ooh, well, so far in 63 years, it's been a miserable failure. But tomorrow, once I get that, I'll be so happy. So Bhagavad Gita is saying, like, okay, try to be a little sober. Dhiras tatra namuyati. Right? So Bhagavad Gita says, Yamhina yatyante te pusham pusharshava samduka sakam dhirya yomi tatpraya kalpate. Says that because as far as that sense satisfaction, gross or subtle, sometimes it's there. Sometimes people do adore us. Sometimes the weather is just like we want. And sometimes it's a hurricane. And sometimes, so sometimes sometimes we get the happiness and sometimes the happiness isn't there. But it says one whose steadiness in happiness and distress and is not disturbed by either. So that's actually the liberated state. That's actually the liberated state. So that comes from, okay, I'm not gonna, okay, because we have the power of the spotlight of our consciousness. And we get to direct the spotlight of our consciousness where we choose. That's a distinctive human capacity. We tend to give away that power and we just get dragged by lust. Okay, let me turn it towards, rather than focusing on the scene, let me focus on the seer. Who is it that's seeing? That's the self turning towards itself. Okay. Yeah, because I'm hearing this sound. Who is this person inside this body, hearing through these ears, speaking through this mouth, seeing through these eyes, smelling through this nose? Who is the seer? Who is the hearer? I'm experiencing anger. I'm experiencing sadness. I'm experiencing envy. Okay, let's not pretend we're not experiencing. Who's the experiencer? So once we ask that question, who's the experiencer? That's the self beginning to turn towards itself and self-discovery. Thanks for your question.
As you were mentioning, I remember I was reading on the news where in Madhya Pradesh in India, there is a diamond mines and a lot of laborers goes to those diamond mines and whole of their life is just to get one diamond from there. And many of them have not got from last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But when the reporter went and asked them that what are you searching for? They said, I'm searching for diamonds. They said, when will you get it? Tomorrow. If not tomorrow, day after tomorrow.
Okay.
If not after some time. Someday I will get it. There was a kind of a bright smile on his face.
Yeah.
Chasing and expecting it's not there, but I will get it after some time.
Yeah. Thanks for that rather painful example. And we could probably all see ourselves in those diamond miners. We each have, our different diamonds. So it's an analogy we use. Actually, there's a book by Saint Teresa of Avila called The Interior Castle. And it's a fascinating book. And the whole book is like she wrote it, kind of like the time of Lord Chaitanya, about 500 years ago, Simon the Six Goswamis. And the whole book is based on a metaphor that the self is a diamond. The self is a diamond, and covered by different layers. And like the innermost layer is the diamond's loving, blissful relation in pure service to God without any extraneous desires for anything tawdry or superfluous. And so just like a diamond, so at the core, we're that diamond soul. This is the beginning of a philosophical response to the question, who am I? I've been involved in personal growth, human potential movement, self-realization, self-development seminars and programs since the 1970s. It's a long time, since I'm a teenager. And I've seen two basic approaches to transformation and personal growth. One approach, I call it the blank slate approach, where the assumption is, at the core, we are nothing. And on the foundation of that nothing, we can invent any possibility we choose. So that's not Bhagavad Gita. Okay. I've been in rooms with hundreds of people jumping up and down and celebrating and chanting, we are nothing, we are nothing, we are nothing. It didn't do much for me personally, but I've seen it, I've witnessed it. Couldn't make this stuff up, okay? So the Bhagavad Gita is at the core, we're not nothing. The core, we're a diamond, the spirit soul, the deathless spirit soul. And we get that we're deathless, then we're secure. And then you can't touch me, even if you try to destroy the money in the bank account in my name or this or that. Because only the body dies. Antavanti me deha nityasukta saririna. Anasino prameyasya tasmad yudyasva bharata. Only the material body dies. Even that's not completely true if we focus in, if we deconstruct it a bit more. Okay. Because the actual truth is the body's already dead. I don't mean to be morbid, but no, but it is, okay? Just like, it's like the driver of the car, okay? So the driver is the living force. The car, let's say there was a visitor, an alien from the galaxy Andromeda, and it comes to Earth, and the alien might think, oh, there's these living entities on the planet Earth called Mercedes-Benz and Chevrolet, and like that, but and the alien's got it wrong. No, actually, but the alien might think, now these parasite living entities called humans, and so they kind of suck the energy of the Renault and the BMWs. The actual truth is, the vehicle is always dead. It's always made of dead rubber, plastic, and metal. It's always dead. It appears to be alive because the driver's inside. Similarly, because we, the spirit soul, that passes from boyhood to youth to old age, because the spirit soul is in the body, it appears alive. But the body's always changing and it's always made of dead matter. There's one change of body we call death. One change of body we call death. And to the extent that we get, I'm a spirit soul that's unstoppable, that never dies, then we're fearless, then we're secure. And this is a process. This is a process for realizing who we are as the diamond soul. And just like a diamond is always bright and brilliant and shiny, and a diamond is always strong and effulgent. But a diamond can be covered by dirt, it can be covered by dust, it can be covered by thick mud. So the process of self-realization, the process of transformation, it's not a process of inventing something that is not there. It's a process of cleansing. So to different degrees, we have allowed the pure self we are to be covered by dust, dirt, and thick mud. And so this process of chanting the names of the Supreme, chanting Hare Krishna, this is a process of cleansing the dust from the diamond. Hare Krishna. What's next in our program?
We just have 5 minutes standing kirtan. After that, we'll have our dinner.
What's 5 minutes?
We would have a 5 minute standing kirtan.
Standing kirtan and then prasad. Okay. So thank you for your attention. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Jai.